Chapter 216, Shock. A third of the mountain valley had been enclosed by the canopy of necromancy. Black clouds obstructed all light and a thick sense of death floated everywhere, making the mercenaries within feel extremely uncomfortable. In the center of the canopy of necromancy, having undergone a slaughter, Han Shao was finding his desires hard to control. The aura of killing intent around him created a scene in which his mind was starting to run out of control. Thankfully, his long-honed willpower hauled back on the reins at the most critical moment, forcefully halting his further descent into madness. He sat down cross-legged and ignored the chaos around him. Han Shao calmed himself and concentrated, slowly placating his deep desires. 3 zombie warriors, 2 hate warriors and 7 to 8 skeletal warriors stood around him. The little skeleton wielded a bone dagger as his purple eye sparkled. He was as if a general leading thousands. He stood with a puffed up chest plate and looked towards the front, silently protecting Han Shao. The most magnificent building in the valley finally collapsed with a roar beneath Edwin and Belinda's concerted efforts. The earth-shaking explosion shook the entire mountain valley. All of a sudden, whether it was mercenaries living further away in the valley, those meditating or practicing, or yet others sparring with each other, all members of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band realized that their old nest was under attack and surged towards the valley. In a place exceedingly far away, a knight wearing gleaming silver armor charged over on the back of a warhorse clad with silver armor whilst wielding a 3-meter-long javelin. A thin black figure moved adroitly amongst the branches of trees with thick accumulation of snow, swiftly making up for her tardiness in arriving. A loose black dress and several colorful ribbons concealed her face as she moved. Only 2 long-tipped ears indicated her identity as an elf. Andy and the Thunder Mage made use of the moonlight to fly through the air from another direction. They too were rushing over to render aid, panic and shock written all over their faces. Who dares come wreak havoc in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band? A furious roar shook the earth from the knight clad in silver armor. Even though his head was covered by a silver helmet, this roar still echoed throughout the entire valley. The Knights of Light are here. It looks like we should retreat. Belinda cast a look into the distance and turned to speak to Edwin. Edwin nodded and suddenly pointed at the horizon in shock. Hey, who's that? Belinda followed the direction of Edwin's finger and looked at the sky. Although there was the cover from the canopy of necromancy, gouts of flame still enable the two to identify an enormous black figure through the light of the flames. It's that person's magical pet, a young dark dragon. To think that they followed us here as well. Belinda seemed to remember her earlier embarrassment and responded with a heavy tone. Hey, then that's perfect. We don't need to be in a hurry to leave. If it wasn't for Gilbert and the others, then all of the Rainbow Sickle mercenaries' attacks would have been targeted at Edwin and Belinda. Now that Gilbert and the others were here to divert attention away from them, they naturally wouldn't have to bear the brunt of the pressure. Gilbert made use of his fast flight speed over the valley to haul Emily and Phoebe around, spewing out red-hot flames at the buildings below and drowning them in a sea of fire. Gilbert would send a stream of green poison down to wherever a concentrated group of people were. The mercenaries all screamed in agony and dodged away to all sides. If any were splashed with even a hint of the green poison, they would lose their lives in the span of a moment. Lowly lives, you shouldn't have angered us. This is the punishment that I, Dark Dragon Gilbert, am visiting on you for your lowly actions. Gilbert's resonant voice sounded out as he passed over the mountain valley. He was dancing in his excitement and proud of the destruction that he had wrought. O noble God of light, hear my calls. Disperse all darkness, radiant glory. A wizened voice suddenly rang out in the chaotic mountain valley. All sorts of cries, shouts and collision sounds were unable to bury this chant. An exceedingly strong beam of light ripped through the sky and the pure divine elements of light suffused the valley. The black clouds formed by the canopy of necromancy was diffused in an instant and vanished without a trace. The resplendent and stunning light scattered down over the valley, intermixing with the soft light from the stars. When the divine power of light shone down, the presence of death was swiftly banished and all the mercenaries in the valley were no longer affected by the darkness. Apart from the little skeleton being unafraid of the light, all the dark creatures that Han Shao had summoned began to rot in an exceedingly short amount of time. They displayed expressions of great pain and hurriedly began to find cover. The dark creatures that had been protecting Han Shao under the little skeleton's orders were also all in great pain, but they seemed to fear the little skeleton greatly. Although their bodies were fast decomposing, they didn't and leave. They all looked pleadingly at the little skeleton, waiting for the little skeleton's forgiveness. The little skeleton finally waved his hand, allowing the dark creatures to disperse. They all hid beneath roofs or found a random hole in the ground to burrow into, attempting to evade the rays from the radiant glory. The injured mercenaries saw their wounds miraculously come under control beneath the radiant beams of light. They all recovered some of their energy like they'd been quickly healed. When the element of light filled the valley, it immediately turned the situation around. Shortly thereafter, an old man wearing the accoutrements of a priest of the Church of Light with graying hair but in good spirits started patrolling the valley with a benevolent gaze in his eyes. "He's here all right. When Florida was injured so heavily, I thought he might go back. Let's go. Florida must have been transferred elsewhere. Otherwise the building that he lives in wouldn't have had only that little bit of defense." Edwin looked viciously at the light Archmage Ferguson as he stood in the shadows of a house and spoke slowly to Belinda. "Yes, we'll find it hard to leave soon if we linger any longer." Belinda understood just how strong Ferguson was. She didn't hesitate. The golem had already transformed back into a beam of white light as soon as she'd finished speaking, disappearing into her scroll. On the other side, the bellowing Gilbert fled swiftly into the skies without another sound when he saw that this old man had used a single light magic to change the situation. As soon as he'd appeared, Ferguson frowned as he saw Gilbert about to leave and chained a basic radiant/spell. The light element surrounding the mountain valley suddenly coalesced into three swords of light swiftly shooting towards Gilbert. Gilbert turned his head back and spewed out a gout of flame, hauling two of the swords. Emily hastily released a hand of death and blocked the other sword of light. It was only after that the dragon and two girls finally made it out of the mountain valley. After Ferguson had released the radiant/a strong purse of light magic formed, resulting in ripples of magic spreading out from the epicenter. The ripples screeched through the air as cracks grew swiftly in the ground. A building roughly 50 square meters was in the path of these ripples. It was instantly crushed to rubble and stone shards flew through the sky. "Edwin, old friend, I could feel that hateful presence from you from a far distance away. Come on out," Ferguson called out in the direction of his attack after releasing the light magic. It looked like Gilbert wasn't Ferguson's primary target. Otherwise he wouldn't have left so easily. As someone on his level and an opponent he was quite familiar with, Edwin was Ferguson's true target. Hey, it's so good to see you. However, this place isn't suitable for me. Goodbye." Edwin's sinister laugh traveled from the pile of rubble as a dark figure slowly faded after these words were delivered, disappearing from the wreck. "I'll find you." Ferguson's face was calm. He didn't look happy or sad, and there were no ripples of anger in his voice either. "There's another one down there, and he actually looks unafraid of death." Thunder Mage Asa looked askance below and called out with surprise. There was a figure shimmering with a blood-red light in the center of the ruined mountain valley. He sat there like a boulder, as unmoving as a mountain, ignoring all that was going on around him. A figure that was slightly shorter, wielding a bone dagger with 7 bone spurs on his back and a purple left eye, stood by his side, unswerving in his loyalty and looking like he was protecting the other. "It's him, the person who almost killed Florida at the border of the valley." The fire mage Andy immediately cried out after flicking a glance down. Everyone was shocked after these words. They all looked at Hansha, perplexed, not understanding why he hadn't left at this time. Could it be that he wanted to use his own power alone to fight against the entire Rainbow Sickles mercenary band? Didn't he know that there was a light Grand Magus in the mercenary band? "Surround him, I want him alive." A trace of anger finally colored Ferguson's voice. It was unknown whether or not he was angry that Hansha had entered Florida, or that Hansha was ignoring all of them. Understood. The Knights of Light immediately surged forward from all directions after hearing Ferguson's orders, surrounding Hansha with 3 layers. Up in the sky, Archangels Andy and Asa, as well as Grand Magus Ferguson and Sharpshooter Maxine, also surrounded Hansha as well. By this point it was likely that only a Magister or a Divine Knight or Sword Master would be able to leave at will. Hansha was obviously not at that level of existence. As everyone focused on Hansha, a stunning light suddenly lit up Light Archmage Ferguson's eyes. His calm face was suddenly filled with a bizarre expression. His brows were knit together, the furrows in his forehead twitching as his mouth opened and closed. Incredible shock filled his expression, as well as a few traces of worry and fear. fear. "Grandpa Ferguson, what's wrong?" Maxine looked at Ferguson with an odd expression not too far away. Maxine's features were comprised of an exquisite flawless face like she was a perfect work of art. She had all the advantages that a beauty of the elves should possess: a long and limber body, an ethereal bearing, gleaming green tresses that were like a waterfall, and a heart-stopping face. All of this had come together in a marvelous combination to form an elfin beauty that would cause cities to go to war for her. On a cliff on the other side of the valley where Han Shao and Gilbert had stood, Edwin and Belinda were now standing side by side. The expression on Edwin's face was incredibly similar to Ferguson and the others below. A stern light flowed out from his eyes, focusing on the little skeleton wielding his bone dagger. His expression encompassed a few gleeful traces of obtaining a heavenly treasure amidst unparalleled shock, and his lips trembled uncontrollably. "Master Edwin, what's wrong?" Belinda looked oddly at Edwin, asking the exact same question as Maxine. "That little skeleton isn't afraid of the radiant glory." Ferguson and Edwin said at almost the same time with exceedingly different emotions. "I don't know how that person has done it, but he must die now. He can't live for another second." In all these years it was the first time that Ferguson had made up his mind to kill someone. An unquestionable resolution filled these words. On the other side, Edwin took a deep breath in and said gleefully, "He must stay alive no matter what." In the last 1,000 years, light magic has always been the bane of dark magic. If the dark creatures no longer need to fear the rays of light magic, then the Calamity Church will completely change the situation, and the Church of Light will no longer be able to halt our footsteps forward. Belinda immediately woke to her senses after hearing these words, as her eyes were also filled with shock and delight. She then looked at Edwin. "What should we do?" "We need to save him no matter what. He absolutely can't die," Edwin said firmly. He'd never wanted to protect someone as bad as he did now. Chapter 217, a bloody explosion. "Knights of Light, kill them immediately. This person and dark creature cannot be permitted to stay in this world." Ferguson's expression was grim as he called out lowly. The group of knights who just surrounded Han Shao and were about to take him alive were rather surprised by this sudden change of heart. However, they only paused for a second, still intending on executing Ferguson's orders. Up on the cliff, Edwin didn't waste time hesitating and shot down toward Han Shao with Belinda. He planned on saving Han Shao whatever the cost and get to the bottom of why that dark creature was unafraid of light magic. At the same time, Han Shao suddenly opened his eyes and swept a cold glance around his surroundings, revealing a bizarre smile. He chanted out a simple necromancy magic, and the little skeleton who'd stayed by his side all this time vanished without a trace as a beam of black light broke through the skies. "Farewell everyone." Han Shao smiled after the little skeleton had disappeared. The blood-red light that had been circling around Han Shao suddenly shot to the heavens after his words, and an enormous explosion rang out. Increasingly loud explosions with Han Shao's location as the epicenter began to shake the ground and skies. The entire valley trembled, and the knights closest to the center were blasted to shreds, blood and flesh flying out like shrapnel. Edwin and Belinda had been descending rapidly when they saw the sudden explosion from below, accompanied by the ear-numbing explosions. Waves of evil blood-red light blasted towards their location in the sky, shocking the two of them. Edwin slammed on the brakes, skidding as he used the levitation spell to grab Belinda. They floundered around in the sky in order to evade the light, and then cast urgent looks to the enormous change down below. Stunned stupefaction filled their face as they looked down incredulously. When the dust had settled, an enormous hole 6 meters deep and 10 meters wide had appeared where Han Shao had been sitting down cross-legged. A thick sense of blood slowly floated out along with dark red clouds of air. The only things left were a pockmarked surface and the mangled bodies of some knights by the hole. Han Shao had vanished without a trace, and no matter how grimly those remaining searched, they couldn't discover a single trace of him. Taking a deep breath in, Ferguson restrained his anger and said, "Stop searching. Although I don't know how he did it, that person's left already." "Then what should we do now?" Thunder Mage Asa asked respectfully when facing Ferguson. "I need to know everything about this person as soon as possible." "As detailed as possible." A trace of rare anxiety colored Ferguson's tone as he looked back at Asa. "Understood. We'll do this immediately," Asa responded. Female archer Maxine roughly understood why Ferguson had lost his composure thus. At this time, that someone who could turn the situation around like this had appeared on the continent meant that this might bring nightmarish effects to the Church of Light. Therefore, as an important person in the Church of Light, Ferguson would be sure to use all resources available to kill this possibility before it even formed. Nice going, kid, he's got some moves alright to be able to escape so miraculously. It was a good thing that Edwin had stopped his descent. Otherwise he might have been embroiled within it as well. He was delighted to see Han Shao-Oh's miraculous escape and couldn't help but compliment him. Master Edwin, this person is enemies with our Calamity Church. Clarendon died at his hands and he even killed Johnny. Belinda couldn't help but speak up when she saw Edwin's attitude undergo a 180-degree change. What do these grudges matter as long as he's willing to work with us? All humans have weaknesses and we can give him whatever he needs. Not to mention that Ferguson's discovered his peculiarities today. The Church of Light will try to kill him at all costs. Ferguson himself will be helping us in making this person work with us. Edwin laughed heartily and took Belinda higher up in the skies, slowly leaving the mountain. There was a lake with a thick layer of ice roughly 10 li away from the Rainbow Sickle Mountain Valley. On this frosty winter day the lake had been frozen into ice cubes and the smooth mirror surface glistened beneath the moonlight. However, a bolt of red light streaked through the sky and descended from the heavens like a falling star, crashing down to the earth, slamming violently onto the sturdy ice. The lake exploded outwards as a huge crater appeared on the mirror-smooth lake surface. The waters of the lake began to spurt through the cracks of the ice as the ice began to crumble under the impact. A slender figure shot out of the crater in the next breath. Han Shao was sopping wet as he landed on a piece of ice that hadn't cracked. He immediately sat down and began to adjust his breathing. Han Shao opened his eyes after roughly 15 minutes and huffed out lightly. Dark red muddy air floated out of his pores like string and vanished with the gusts of the chilly winter wind. Han Shao stood up from his cross-legged position and changed into a dry shirt. He once again took to the air and gathered his bearings before flying swiftly towards the Valley of Sunshine. After fully grasping all of Chu Yanglan's memories and having reached the bloodlust realm, Han Shao could now deftly utilize some secret arts. The blood explosion shield was an art that helped one escape. It was usually triggered with blood essence to form a series of explosions, enabling the cultivator to move their body and escape the place of danger in the ensuing sound and chaos. However, most cultivators wouldn't use this method that would consume a lot of blood essence if they didn't have to. That was because once this was cast, the cultivator would exhaust a great deal of energy due to consuming blood essence and would find themselves in a disadvantageous situation. However, this hadn't been the case with his casting this time. Having reached the bloodlust realm, Han Shao's body had naturally produced a violent killing aura after engaging in the massacre in the mountain valley. The aura had naturally attracted the fear and resentment from the mercenaries he'd killed and concentrated it in his body. The stronger this power became, the harder it became to control. This impending lack of control was what had caused Han Shao to immediately prioritize his mind's recovery even in the middle of the battlefield. After suddenly awaking in the middle of recovery, he'd immediately understood that he was surrounded by a group of experts. At the moment, the violent aura around him was still disorderly and hard to control. He suddenly recalled the blood explosion shield in this moment of danger, and a thought struck him. He turned this aura into energy and used the energy he'd absorbed as a foundation to cast this art. In this way, not only had he created a commotion that had shaken the heavens and earth, brutally killing some knights who hadn't had time to react, Han Shao had also left unhurriedly from the encirclement of the various knights. At the same time, he'd been able to release a power out of his control and he hadn't harmed himself at all. When he had again returned to the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shao felt that his body had once again been miraculously tempered in the slaughter of the Rainbow Sickle mercenaries. Perhaps it was because he'd cast the blood explosion shield and consumed the random disorderly power, but there was a tiny bit of pure power left at the very end that had miraculously been absorbed by the magical yuan. It looks like adventuring is needed in order to pick up the pace of improvement. Han Shao couldn't help but murmur to himself when he felt the changes in his body thanks to the fight against the knights earlier. The metallic sound of battle caused Han Shao to pay close attention to his surroundings. Coming to a halt in midair, he began to carefully investigate the situation around him. Having fully developed his brain due to magical cultivation, Han Shao was quite familiar with the layout of the nearby terrain as he'd committed the entire map to memory. When he listened carefully, he quickly realized where the sounds were coming from and where he currently was as well. The clashes were coming from the house of Minlo. This matter might even have something to do with Trunks and the others. I should go take a look at the strength of my unknown troops, Han Shao murmured to himself and changed his flight path, making for the house of Minlo's territory. Chapter 218. A cry from the heart. The house of Minlo was located within a small mountain in the Valley of Sunshine. The center of the mountain had been hollowed out into caves all interconnected to form a matrix of astonishing defense. Han Shao came in from the air and stood on a towering tree tens of meters tall, looking towards the source of the noises. He saw the caves where the house of Minlo stored their weapons on fire, with thick smoke rising into the air. Tongues of flame flicked out from some of the entrances. It looked like everything was on fire. These caves each had many stone chambers hewn into them. Each was a room with all the necessities of life inside. Many of them were even more luxurious than some of the shops within the Valley of Sunshine, so it was very normal for the whole thing to go up in flames once a fire dragon spell was logged inside. A group of masked people were moving swiftly around the entrance to the small mountain. There were some fire mages amongst them who occasionally chanted fire spells, sending gouts of flame towards the mountain entrance. Their movements were swift and highly coordinated. The fire mages would release fire, the wind mages call up winds to push the fire along, and several archers would force those of the house of Minlo who dared poke their heads out back inside again. Nevertheless, the small mountain was actually quite large after it had been hollowed out. With so many caves and stone chambers, this band of marauders could only target a section of the mountain. Once Minlo reinforcements arrived, they would immediately split up and conceal their movements, hiding into the surrounding shrubbery for cover. They were obviously very familiar with the surrounding terrain and well versed in these guerrilla tactics. They would quickly retreat whenever someone discovered them and then circle around, coming in from another side to continue wreaking havoc. Under normal circumstances, this group of people would have been dead without a doubt if they hadn't retreated after the first wave of attacks. However, the house of Minlo was completely preoccupied at the moment. This group of troublemakers wasn't the main target. Their main focus was on a group of heavily equipped robbers around 500 strong. The robbers' motives were unknown, but they were besieging the mountain and attacking anyone who walked out of it. These two sides were locked in heated battle. Han Shao stood in the distance and looked out for a bit, doubled over in laughter as he saw Trunks' men taking advantage of the chaos and adding further confusion. He hadn't thought Trunks would be talented in this regard. The House of Minlo mission this time had only been to make this power suspect the other factions. Han Shao was a bit surprised at how things had developed. Even more cavalry with gleaming armor wielding sharp weapons came galloping from a path in the distance. Their adornments clearly identified them as those of the House of Minlo. There were roughly 600 of them, each with an uncommon air to them. They were likely the elites of this house. The direction that this group was charging in happened to be where Trunks and the others were. Yet to detect the danger they were about to encounter, they were currently planning on causing another round of mischief. Han Shao finally couldn't sit still any longer and flew to where they were. The sky was already lightening and the stars had hidden behind the depths of the night at some point. It seemed like daybreak would come soon. Just as Trunks was about to start on his final round of mischief, a black shadow landed with a whoosh in front of him. He started badly but breathed a sigh of relief when he discovered that it was Han Shao. "What are you doing here?" "I happened to be passing by and saw that the elites of Minlo are about to return. They're going to pass through here. Let's hurry and leave." Han Shao smiled slightly and explained the situation to Trunks without further ado. When he heard that the elites of Minlo were returning, Trunks shouted lowly and gestured at the mercenaries off in the distance. These fellows were covered from head to toe and immediately understood Trunks' hand gesture. They didn't gather together to leave en masse, but actually spread out even further and made use of the terrain to conceal themselves, slowly vanishing without a trace. "Let's go." Trunks didn't remain playing idle as he turned his head to smile at Han Sha-o darting into the thick undergrowth. Snow lay heavily on the branches of the towering trees blocking the sky's light. The densely packed branches made it hard to trave, but Trunks wasn't the least bit bothered. He took Han Sha-o down several twisted paths, emerging far away from the house of Minlo's mountain roughly half an hour later on the path to the Valley of Sunshine. Those were all old Rainbow Sickle mercenaries. Everything within the valley was under our control when the old chief was still here, and we're so familiar with the terrain that we can navigate it with our eyes closed, so don't worry about their safety, Trunks said to Han Sha-o when they left the mountain. Han Sha-o had observed the group's operations when he was on high ground earlier. They showed a high degree of collaboration and were all quite strong. Most of them were journeyman swordsmen or sergeant knights, with a few adept mages and swordsmen mixed in. There were many of them with uncommon bow and arrow skills. It looked like things were as Trunks had said. They were the old mercenaries of the Rainbow Sickle Band. With such a group of people and Trunks' plans, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would have an easy path forward in the future. Right, what happened with you? Why did robbers come knocking on the doors of the house of Minlo? Han Sha-o couldn't help but ask. Trunks couldn't hold his laughter in when he heard this question. We happened to see this band of robbers on our way to the house of Minlo. They were about to rob a caravan. We pointed out the proper path after fighting with them, and they attacked the house of Minlo with our guidance. When they finally disturbed those guys inside, the robbers started fighting them. We took advantage of the chaos to create more havoc everywhere else. We'd thought that the robbers would be immediately defeated and had made plans to retreat early, but who would have thought that the elites of the house of Minlo were deployed elsewhere on some unknown business? When the robbers saw that the elites weren't surging out to attack them, they grew more bold and continued to attack. We stuck around a bit longer and you saw the rest. So that was the case. Are there many groups of robbers like those in the mountain ranges around the valley? Han Sha-o nodded and asked with a faint smile. Of course. Since the valley sits where three nations' borders meet, many merchants seek to do business in the Valley of Sunshine. Therefore there are many bands of robbers in the vicinity as well. Two of them even number in the thousands, and they're made of wanted fugitives from the three nations. The leaders of the two bands of robbers are a man and a woman. The man is called Gustav, nicknamed the Butcher, an infamous criminal in the Casey Empire. He kills without blinking and is exceedingly brutal. If a merchant caravan runs into his crew, then they're truly unlucky. If his mood is fair, all the goods and beauties will be taken away, but if his mood is ill, no one is left alive. Florida cooperated with Gustav that year to scheme against our old chief, killing him and causing my little sister Annie to disappear. I'm going to kill him sooner or later. There's another woman called Janet. She's basically inherited her father's business. Her father was a robber, her grandfather was a robber, and her great-grandfather was also a robber. They're a notable family of robbers in these mountain ranges. She's been raised as a robber as soon as she was born, and although she's not a kind sort, she still has certain principles. As long as the merchants who run afoul of her don't resist, they're usually able to retain their lives. Apart from these two, there are about a dozen small to mid-sized robber groups in the mountains. Their scales of operation are smaller and they're not as famous as these two, Trunks explained. Han Sha-o listened for a bit and then asked further about the strength of the robbers before nodding. It looks like the robbers and mercenaries in the Valley of Sunshine mutually depend on each other. Whether it's the robbers or the mercenaries, both of these are vital for the ecosystem of the valley. What do you mean? Trunks asked. Merchants won't need protection if there are no robbers. Therefore the mercenaries won't be able to make any money. Without mercenaries, the merchants wouldn't dare come here, and thus the robbers won't have anything to take. Therefore it's completely logical that both mercenaries and robbers can be found within the valley. With the strength of the four factions in the Valley of Sunshine, they should have the ability to destroy the robbers. However, perhaps it's because they understand this that they haven't done so and have allowed the robbers to exist. Han Sha-o smiled and explained. Trunks chuckled after his words. That's right, the old chief understood this back in the day. To think you'd understand that so quickly as well. Nodding, Han Sha-o looked at the sky. Let's go, it's late. We should hurry back to the valley. I want to take a look at some things as well. Ever since the Rainbow Sickles had left, Han Sha-o had felt a voice calling him from afar. He'd thought that it was the little skeleton running into trouble again at first, but after some careful probing realized that this wasn't the case. case. When he focused his attention, Han Shao discovered that the voice was coming from the dark forest. They weren't too far away from the dark forest, and the cemetery of death was within it as well. When he realized that this call was coming from the dark forest, Han Shao immediately understood that the Earth Elite zombie had successfully broken out of the Earth. However, it was confined by the boundary of the cemetery of death and couldn't exit. Find Han Shao. It could only passively send out this message to its master. Chapter 219, Don't worry, I'll take care of him. Han Shao and Trunks returned to the Valley of Sunshine. Gilbert, Emily and Phoebe had already returned to the store that contained the place of extreme water. They were currently anxiously waiting for Han Shao, afraid that some mishap may have befallen him. Are you alright? I didn't think that old guy Ferguson would also be part of the Rainbow Sickles mercenary band. Luckily his main target wasn't us, or we might not have returned so easily with Gilbert, Emily exclaimed upon seeing Han Shao's safe return, a trace of fear lingering in her heart. Contrary to what you think, Ferguson minded the events of tonight very much. There is no way the Rainbow Sickles mercenary band will quietly endure the losses they suffered tonight. We must be more careful. Han Shao understood that the Rainbow Sickles mercenary band were not weak. The reason the chaos in the valley had happened then was because none of their high-level experts had been present. Otherwise it would have been impossible for them to stir up such a massive disturbance. What happened afterwards? Phoebe and the two others had left early, so they were unaware of what had transpired later. She couldn't help but inquire after seeing Han Shao come back safe and sound. Nothing of significance. After you left I also escaped under the cover of the chaos, Han Shao replied. Continuous pleas tugged at Han Shao's mind and heart emanating from the distant dark forest. Since there was nothing else to address, Han Shao could no longer resist his curiosity, so he said shortly, there shouldn't be any problems during daytime. Everyone has worked hard throughout the night. While the skies haven't completely brightened, take a short break. The moment these words left his mouth, Han Shao hastily returned to his room. He recited a spell and the small skeleton that had been faithfully guarding him appeared before him, bone dagger in hand. Han Shao gave a command and brought out the magic sticks that led towards the cemetery of death. He set up the formation and hastily set a foot inside, activating the formation with his mental strength. A brilliant flash of white light blinded him as the scenery around him shifted radically in the blink of an eye. Han Shao stepped out into the hall of the cemetery of death, his eyes greeted by mounds of dirt protruding from the ground. Under the murky darkness of the sky, the dense earth element kept congregating in this bastion of extreme earth. Like the tumultuous ocean currents, the ground trembled softly as though it were made of waves. One by one the mounds of dirt bulged and dissipated as the firm dirt turned as soft as sand. There was a deep hole in the center as the dirt seethed as though an enormous mudfish was twisting and tossing. The cemetery of death was protected by a special boundary. Without the eye of darkness that Han Shao grasped in his hand, there was no way for any person to enter or exit this place. The moment the Earth Elite zombie was born, it followed its instincts to search for Han Shao. As it turned out, Han Shao's current location, the Valley of Sunshine, was not too far from the dark forest. Hence the moment the Earth Elite zombie sensed Han Shao's presence, it immediately strove to get closer but was unfortunately blocked by the barrier. Irritated at not being able to leave, the zombie had been churning the ground as though it wanted to use its special abilities to exit the cemetery through the ground. However, it was obvious that the cemetery of death was indeed a marvelous place with wondrous powers. Despite being a favored son of the Earth and having the ability to travel through the Earth as it desired, the Earth Elite zombie could not overcome the restriction. This sufficiently proved that the status of the Cemetery of Death as a sacred ground for necromancers was definitely not a name given in vain. Come out! Han Shao immediately called out after he stepped into the cemetery. Immediately after he spoke, a slightly yellow shadow abruptly emerged from the ground in the center and stood stiffly at attention in front of Han Shao. It was still an ordinary zombie warrior, but its appearance had undergone quite a change after being refined by the secret arts of demonic cultivation. The original dark green of its face had faded to a yellow pallor, and its entire body was covered by armor slicked with yellow oil. A faint light flickered its way way through it and a thick sense of earth spirit emanated from the armor. The yellowish armor had slowly formed after the Earth Elite Zombie had absorbed the earth chi of the land and mixed the chi with several uncommon materials that Han Shao had provided. The Earth Elite Zombie had refined the mixture along with his body, and so the armor covered all of its skin. The durability of the body was vastly greater than before, and he could use the earth chi to form all sorts of attacks. He could also fly through the earth to conceal his movements or suddenly attack enemies. The Earth Elite Zombie stood at 180 centimeters with an ordinary unremarkable face. Its face was split into a wide open grin at this time, revealing an odd smile that was a bit simple. It was looking delightedly at Han Shao. Like the little skeleton, although the Earth Elite Zombie had a soul, it wasn't able to directly communicate with Han Shao. He could only make use of the mysterious connection between the two to communicate. The Earth Elite Zombie grinned widely at Han Shao and waved his enormous hands around, calming the furrows in the earth and restoring calm to the area. "Alright, I know your abilities, stop showing off." It was like a mischievous kid eager to show off its abilities. Han Shao understood that the Earth Elite Zombie had just formed and that its intelligence was quite low. He'd need to keep infusing it with knowledge so that it would understand more. The Earth Elite Zombie moved its lips after Han Shao had spoken and jumped into the center of his hiding place with a flip of his body. The ground shook slightly as the Earth Elite Zombie reappeared, clutching three vaguely shifting shadows. "Oh, the three Yin demons have formed as well." Han Shao was surprised and immediately activated the magical yuan in his delight. He sent a beam of black light towards the vague shadows and shouted, "Yin demons, take your places according to my order." When the black light hit the three indistinct shadows, strands of black cord appeared around them, making their forms clearer and more distinct. They had long tails, sharp fangs, and was as large as vicious wild monkeys. All three had two sharp horns and a pair of bat-like meaty wings. Their faces had evil deep green eyes that sparkled with a frightening ruthless light. This was the true form of the Yin demons. When their forms grew clear, they flew out from the Earth Elite Zombie's hands and through the air like lightning. Their forms shimmered between tangible and ghostly, changing their shapes at will in the air and emitting soul-wrenching howls as they moved. The three Yin demons circled around Han Shao once and entered his body through the back of his neck with a thought, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Han Shao then smiled and gave his body a shake. Four Han Shaos appeared in thin air. Apart from his own body, the three were formed by the Yin demons. They were truly marvelously incredible. The Earth Elite Zombie hadn't the slightest clue of what had transpired and was obviously confused. He stood there unmoving, looking dumbly at Han Shao. After a while, the Earth Elite Zombie grinned bashfully and moved his stocky figure, instantly standing next to the leftmost Han Shao. It reached out a left index finger to point at Han Shao, meaning, "I found you." There was a marvelous connection between the two, so Han Shao didn't find it odd that the Earth Elite Zombie could identify him. As he watched the Earth Elite Zombie look at him with an honest smile, Han Shao's thoughts moved again as the three Yin demons transformed back into three beams of black light and returned to Han Shao's body. Han Shao continued to practice, quickly transforming the three Yin demons into replicas of himself. He repeated this a dozen times until he had a solid grasp on this technique. The Earth Elite Zombie needed quite a bit of time to identify Han Shao, but when Han Shao kept practicing, the Earth Elite Zombie used the connection between the two to identify the real Han Shao with lightning speed as soon as replicas appeared. The Earth Elite Zombie thought that Han Shao was playing a fun game with him and ceaselessly identified the real Han Shao, not feeling tired or bored at all. It kept grinning with a silly honest grin and didn't possess the cold ruthlessness that a zombie should have at all. This made Han Shao some worry about whether or not the zombie could develop quickly. Han Shao wasn't Chu Kanglan, so he couldn't bring this zombie warrior around with him wherever he went and attend all sorts of events. Therefore Han Shao thought for a moment and decided to send the Earth Elite Zombie to the dimension that he'd come from. He wasn't worried about the Earth Elite Zombie's strength. After refinement from his secret arts, the Earth Elite Zombie was certain to become a very useful helper to him. However, It had just been born from the earth right now and seemed a bit naive and simple. It would need to grow quickly. The little skeleton seemed to have grown into a strong, omnipotent presence in the other dimension. Even Han Shao wasn't sure of how strong the little skeleton was now. Eventually one would run into some enemies that one would have to hide from, so it might actually be a very good idea to send the Earth Elite Zombie back home. I'm going to introduce a friend to you. He has my presence on him, you'll definitely like him. Han Shao thought for a moment and smiled at the Earth Elite Zombie. Han Shao then used his connection with the little skeleton to chant an incantation summoning the little skeleton. Once he arrived, the little skeleton and the Earth Elite Zombie stared silently at each other. The purple eye in the little skeleton was glimmering with vitality and he seemed quite interested in the Earth Elite Zombie. He walked up to it and reached out a stark white hand bone to pat the honest zombie's shoulder and used the other hand to pound his own chest, making a hand gesture to Han Shao. He seemed to mean that I'll take care of him, don't you worry. Chapter 220, Saving up for a rainy day. Both dark creatures had Han Shao's life essence, so they naturally felt a sense of affinity towards each other. He could see threads of empathy slowly begin to flourish between them. The little skeleton and the Earth Elite Zombie were staring at each other seemingly in the midst of a broken conversation. After a short moment they both turned to stare at Han Shao anxiously. Alright, I will send you guys back. Han Shao smiled slightly and replied when the two guys simultaneously expressed their desire to leave. With a spell, the small skeleton and the Earth Elite Zombie vanished without a trace. After the two of them departed, the cemetery of death fell back into silence. The ground settled into stillness, and with the birth of the Yin demons, the Yin demon cave stopped operating. Han Shao looked around and realized there was nothing of further significance in this place. He ruminated briefly before walking towards a valley where the dwarves resided. Han, what brings you here? As soon as he entered the dwarfs' valley, these guileless little dwarves displayed their passion and showered him with a continuous stream of friendly greetings. The last time Han Shao had come here, the dwarves had obtained a large amount of food and daily necessities from him. Now all their elderly and young were adorned in thick cold-resistant cotton-padded clothes, had cozy stoves to warm themselves, and enjoyed an abundant food supply to relieve their hunger. Not even the freezing ice storms of midwinter were scary anymore. Along the way, Han Shao could detect the satisfaction and contentment brimming in dwarves' faces. When these dwarves saw Han Shao, their faces exuded thankfulness and welcoming as they bellowed to one another, spreading the news of Han Shao's arrival. Uncle Han, this is for you. When he made his way to the center of the valley, a 6-year-old snot-nosed dwarf kid ran up with a sugar hawthorn stick in hand. The kid presented a piece of barbecued meat roasted to glistening perfection in his delicate voice. Thank you, dear child. Han Shao smiled as he bent down and patted the head of the dwarf child, who was only a few dozen centimeters tall, while taking the piece of meat with his other hand. The adult dwarves surrounding them all smiled kindly. The atmosphere was extremely harmonious, attesting to the deep sense of goodwill they bore toward Han Shao. When Han Shao entered the center of the village, he saw the familiar faces of the dwarf warrior Bennett as well as the village chief Calvin. He smiled and asked elders, "How has everything been recently?" "Dearest Han, you've taken the cold away from this winter. Everyone has warm clothes and enough food. No one will starve to death this winter." Chief Calvin's face was filled with gratitude. He faced Han Shao and expressed his debt using dwarven etiquette. In the beginning, Han Shao hadn't helped these honest dwarves out of the goodness of his heart. But the more he got to know them, the more he understood that these stubborn dwarves were actually very easy to get along with, and their generosity towards friends was unbelievable. He had won their friendship at an unknown time, but the way they went about their business had also won them his good fault will. He'd planned on just using them in the beginning, but now treated them as good friends that he could depend on. That's good. Let me know if there's anything you need. I'm going to go back to the world of humans soon, and I'll be able to bring you whatever you need. Han Shao had a kind smile on his face as he spoke leisurely with Calvin. Calvin waved his hand, stretched. "No need, we can easily make it through this winter already. We'll use our own efforts to repay you when spring comes. You know that we're a hard-working species. Children need to be raised thus. since young and we need to avoid instilling lazy habits in them. Nodding understandingly, Han Sha-o said. I see. Ah yes. I'd planned on asking you to refine some weapons and armor for me this time. Would that be inconvenient for you, Elder? Han, you're speaking like an outsider. We're friends, why would anything be inconvenient? Prey is scarce in winter and there are very few places in the dark forest that we can freely move around in. Forging weapons is our hobby. It would be very fun to make use of our idle time to forge more weapons. This is no problem at all. Calvin didn't hesitate at all when he agreed, and he looked rather happy as well. Truly, Han, we've been wondering how to repay you during this time. Asking us to forge weapons for you now means that we no longer have to rack our brains anymore. Bennett laughed heartily, expressing the dwarves' sincerity to Han Sha-o. When he saw that the dwarves were still filled with gratitude at Han Sha-o bringing them provisions as well as their desire to not take advantage of their friends, Han Sha-o felt a bit shamefaced at the dwarves' kindness and honesty. He'd approached them with ulterior motives at first and was now rather embarrassed by their outpouring of genuine emotion. You don't need to do anything for now because I haven't thought of what kind of weapons I need. I'll bring the raw materials over next time when I think of what weapons I need, Han Sha-o said. After departing from the Dwarves' Valley, Han Sha-o didn't linger in the dark forest but returned to the Valley of Sunshine through the Cemetery of Death. When he retrieved the magic sticks and walked out of the room, he discovered that it was completely empty. He was a bit taken aback and unsure of when everyone had left. Han Sha-o had completely handed over the matters of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band to Trunks and matters of money to Phoebe. Emily was in charge of all the random dark metal affairs and Gilbert was Phoebe and Emily's bodyguard. The setting sun on the horizon left the clouds in the sky fire as dusk loomed. The Cairo mercenaries were everywhere in the valley taking care of security in shifts, so Han Sha-o wasn't too worried about everyone's safety. Seeing he was the only one left in the storefront and he had nothing else to do, Han Sha-o took out the thick tome of necromancy from the Cemetery of Death and slowly started studying it. He deployed the lost art of the Canopy of Necromancy to great effect on their trip to the Rainbow Sickle hideout last night. If it hadn't been for Light Grand Magus Ferguson's timely arrival, the dark creatures in the vicinity of the spell would have been able to continue wreaking havoc and destruction, displaying uncommon battle strength. Even after absorbing the memories of Necromancer Clarendon from the Calamity Church, there had been no knowledge of the Canopy of Necromancy. He didn't have any knowledge of reviving corpses either. This meant that the Tome of Necromancy in the cemetery was the pinnacle of necromancy magic. There was a vast amount of knowledge and spells contained within, including ones that had been lost. These items were exceedingly useful to Han Sha-o. After receiving Clarendon's memories, Han Sha-o's understanding of necromancy magic had already reached the level of Archmage. He could understand many of the obscure and profession-specific sentences within and had no need to consult Fanny about anything anymore. Time always passed by so swiftly when he was studying magic. The sky had grown completely dark in the blink of an eye, and soft footsteps from outside jerked Han Sha-o from his reverie. His thoughts raced as he sent the 3 yin demons flying outwards. His hasty surveillance revealed that it was Trunks and Gilbert returning together. Brian, good news. I think you'll be very happy, Trunks said happily when he walked in. Starting, Han Sha-o was surprised. What good news? Remember Odysseus and the 6 others who adventured with you in the dark forest? What about them? I saw them enter the valley when I was returning today. Their strength is exceptional and they have a deep relationship with you. Our mercenary band has only just formed and needs people like them. I think they'd want to join us if you invite them. Han Sha-o was delighted when he heard Trunks' words. Good news indeed. Odysseus and Gordon are 2 senior swordsmen, with Aphrodite being a water archmage. The Thunder Journeyman mage and the elven female archer Nia as well make up an altogether strong team. If they join us, I think our band's strength will be rounded out immediately. It looks like we are indeed quite lucky. Hey, they seem to be protecting someone this time. I spoke with them and they said they'll come by tomorrow and catch up with you. It looks like there will be no problems. Trunks smiled. Han Sha-o's brow suddenly furrowed as he listened to Trunks. He looked at a tree not too far off in the distance and said lowly, Mr. Edwin, since you're already here, come inside for a chat.